They told you it was chemistry, that mysterious rush when your heart races, when your palms sweat, when every nerve in your body seems to vibrate because of one single person. They told you it was magic, a miracle of biology, a sign that life is worth living. They said this is desire, this is attraction, this is love. But Carl Jung would look at you with those piercing eyes and say, "No, this is not chemistry. It is not magic. It is your shadow." Because what most people call chemistry is often not love. It is projection, a psychological eruption, an explosion of suppressed needs and forgotten wounds masquerading as romance. Think about it. When you meet someone who makes you feel powerless, so pulled toward them that your logic crumbles, you believe you found a soulmate. But Jung would warn, what you've really found is yourself. Or more precisely, the missing half of yourself that you've never met. Inside every man lives the anima, the unconscious feminine. Inside every woman lives the animus, the unconscious masculine. These inner figures aren't fantasies. They are living, breathing forces within the psyche. They carry all the parts of ourselves we rejected, suppressed, or never developed. And when you encounter someone in the outer world who reflects those inner figures, your psyche lights up like fire. It says, there, that person is the key. That person holds everything you lack. So you don't fall in love with them. You fall in love with the reflection of your hidden self. That is why attraction can feel irrational. You can know the person is unavailable, unhealthy, even dangerous, but the pull is stronger than reason. You feel addicted, haunted, spellbound, because your unconscious believes they are the missing piece. Now imagine what this means in a world where seduction is not just accidental but weaponized, where men and women unconsciously learn to become the mirror of another person's deepest fantasy. A woman doesn't need aggression to dominate a man. She only needs to reflect his anima, his inner, idealized feminine. If he has never faced her inside himself, he won't recognize the illusion. He won't realize he is being seduced by his own shadow. He will believe it is love, when in truth, it is just projection. And here's the dangerous part. The more unconscious we are, the more vulnerable we become. Because if you've never asked yourself, why do I crave what I crave? Then you are not choosing. You are being chosen by your wound. Jung said, the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. But transformation is not always healing. When attraction is driven by shadow, the fire can consume. It can reduce a person to nothing but their obsession. This is the darkest truth about attraction. You are not always drawn to who is good for you. You are drawn to who completes your unfinished story. And sometimes your story is a tragedy. Imagine a man who never felt truly seen by his mother. She was emotionally cold, giving affection only when he chased it. So now, as an adult, when he meets a woman who withholds love, his body lights up. His mind whispers, this is it. This is love. But it's not love. It's an attempt to rewrite the past, to win the battle he lost as a child. This is not choice. This is compulsion. Sexual trauma doesn't always come from physical abuse. It can come from emotional patterns, from love withheld, from affection that had to be earned. The adult relationship becomes the battlefield, and he mistakes war for passion, but the mirror flips both ways. There are women too who are not seeking love, but power. Women whose shadows never received safe affection, so they learn to control desire instead. They don't want to be loved. They want to be chased, worshipped, obsessed over. And when a man falls at their feet, they feel alive, for a moment. But when he asks for intimacy, for real connection, they run. Because the illusion can't survive reality. This is why sexual attraction is often a trap. A psychological snare where your deepest unmet needs disguise themselves as romance. Jung didn't say this to make you afraid of desire. He said it to make you conscious of it. To push you to ask, who do I crave, and why? What wound are they touching inside me? Because if you don't ask those questions, you will repeat the same story again and again, with different faces but the same ending. You'll call it fate, but it's not fate. It's your shadow pulling the strings. Here's a story. A man, successful, respected, intelligent, To the world, he seems whole. But every time he falls in love, it's with a woman who rejects him. One cheats, another ghosts him, another mocks him when he shows vulnerability. Different women. Same story. He knows it's unhealthy. He even warns his friends. But he keeps going back. Why? Because he isn't chasing women. He's chasing his mother's ghost. The distant, cold mother who made him feel invisible. His psyche is trying to fix that wound. It's not love. It's repetition. And that's the trap. You are not addicted to the person. You are addicted to the wound they represent. This is why toxic attraction feels magnetic. Because the unconscious is screaming, this time it will end differently. This time you will win. This time you will be chosen. But you won't. Because it's not healing. It's reenactment. Now pause for a moment and ask yourself, why do you keep falling for the same type? Why does chemistry always pull you toward people who hurt you? Why does logic know they're wrong, but desire insists they're right? The answer is not in logic. It's in the unconscious. Jung warned, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will rule your life, and you will call it fate. So the question is not, why do I desire them? The question is, what inside me is choosing this? Because here is the truth no one wants to face. Sometimes the person you desire the most is the very person who will destroy you. Not because they are evil, but because your unconscious chose them to recreate your first wound, hoping this time you would survive it. That is not love. That is karma. And karma is not punishment. It is repetition until you learn. The darkness is not in the other person. It's in you. In what you project. In what you chase. In what you run from. Sexual attraction can be holy, but only when you see the demon behind the curtain. Only when you ask yourself, is this love? Or am I trying to finish an unfinished story? So before you surrender to desire, you must ask, who is really choosing? Me or my shadow? When Jung spoke of the anima and animus, the unconscious feminine within men, the unconscious masculine within women, he warned that these figures are not neutral. They carry the weight of all that we've rejected, denied, or failed to develop. And when these inner forces are projected outward, they don't just influence our attraction, they dominate it. Imagine the unconscious as a projector. Inside it sits your anima or animus, carrying every wound, every unmet longing, every forbidden desire. And then one day, you meet someone in the outer world who looks just like that inner image. The projector turns on. Their face becomes the screen. Suddenly you are not seeing them. You are seeing yourself. And this is why Jung said, when we fall in love, we are often falling in love with our own unconscious. Now think about your life. How many times have you said, they're my type? But what is a type? A type is not random. A type is a pattern. A type is your unconscious leading you back to the same script, the same role, the same drama. This is the projection trap, the story of the haunted man. Let's return to the man from part 1, the successful, intelligent man who kept falling for women who rejected him. To the world he looked confident, but inside he was haunted. Every time he entered a new relationship, the same dynamic unfolded. The more she pulled away, the harder he chased. The more she withdrew, the more he obsessed. He told himself, if I can just win her love, then I'll be complete. But that thought wasn't about her at all. It was about his mother, his first love, the woman who never gave him the warmth he craved. His unconscious had trapped him in a cycle of reenactment. Jung would call this repetition compulsion. The psyche recreates old wounds, not to torture us, but because it hopes to finally resolve them. The child in him still believed, if I can just earn her love this time, I'll finally be free. But here's the cruel reality. The past cannot be rewritten through another person. And so, instead of healing, he simply repeated the pain. Different women, same ghost. This is how projection traps you. The woman who loved cold men. Now let's flip the mirror. A woman, warm and compassionate, but always drawn to emotionally unavailable men. Men who were charming, exciting, magnetic, but cold, detached, distant. She would say things like, I don't know why I lose interest when a man is too nice, And when friends asked why she stayed with men who mistreated her, she would whisper, "Because when he finally looks at me, when he finally chooses me, it feels like heaven." But this wasn't heaven. It was hell disguised as passion. She was not attracted to kindness because kindness didn't feel like home. Indifference did. Neglect did. Her father had been emotionally distant. She grew up believing love was something to be earned, not given. And so, her unconscious sought out men who could recreate that dynamic. Every cold glance was familiar. Every rejection was the old wound resurfacing. And her attraction was not love. It was a desperate attempt to rewrite the story of her father. This is what Jung meant when he said, "The greatest burden a child must bear is the unlived life of the parents. Because what we do not resolve, we repeat." Weaponized mirrors. Now here's where it gets darker. Projection doesn't only trap the wounded. It empowers the manipulative. Because some people learn, consciously or unconsciously, that if you can reflect back someone's shadow, you can control them. You can become their fantasy. You can step into the role their unconscious has been craving. A woman who reflects a man's anima can make him feel like he has found the one. But she is not the one. She is the mirror. And the more he projects onto her, the more power she holds. A man who reflects a woman's animus can make her feel electrified, consumed, obsessed. But he is not her savior. He is the stage on which her father's ghost is replayed. And here's the horror. Neither person is truly seeing the other. They are only seeing the projection. Love becomes a performance. Intimacy becomes manipulation. Attraction becomes domination. This is why some relationships feel less like romance and more like addiction. Because addiction is not about pleasure. It's about compulsion. It's about being trapped by something you cannot control. The addiction of desire. Let's be honest. Have you ever been in a relationship you knew was toxic, but you couldn't leave? You told yourself, "This is bad for me. This will destroy me." And yet, when they called, you answered. When they withdrew, you chased. When they returned, you forgave. That is not love. That is addiction. The highs are euphoric. The lows are devastating. And the cycle is unbreakable. Until you recognize what's really happening. You are not addicted to them. You are addicted to the wound they represent. Jung would say, you are possessed by your shadow. And when the shadow possesses you, it doesn't whisper. It commands. The illusion of fate. This is why people say things like, "I always fall for the same type," or, "I knew they were bad for me, but I couldn't resist." It feels like fate, but it's not fate. It's programming. The unconscious leading you back to the unfinished story. Again, and again, and again, until you wake up. Because here's the terrifying truth. The unconscious doesn't care about your happiness. It doesn't care about your peace. It only cares about resolution, about completing the cycle. So if your story is unfinished, it will keep writing the same chapter until you finally read it. Breaking the mirror. So how do you break free? How do you stop being a puppet of your shadow? You start by asking the hardest questions. What does this person remind me of? Do I feel safe with them or addicted to them? Is my desire born from wholeness or from emptiness? Because until you confront the truth, you will keep chasing the same ghost in different bodies. And the more unconscious you are, the more dangerous attraction becomes. Because desire doesn't just lead to love. Desire can lead to obsession, to destruction, to the loss of yourself. That's why Jung warned, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will rule your life and you will call it fate. This is the projection trap. The prison of repeating patterns. But awareness is the key, because once you see the mirror, it shatters. Up until now, we've seen how sexual attraction often disguises projection, how it traps us in repetition compulsion, how it makes us mistake ghosts for lovers. But there is a darker level still, one Jung himself hinted at, but that most people are too afraid to face. Attraction doesn't just blind us, it can possess us. When sexual energy fuses with unresolved trauma, it becomes more than a pull. It becomes a chain, an invisible rope around your neck, a spell you cannot break. You don't feel like you are choosing anymore. You feel chosen by something bigger, stronger, almost supernatural. This is why people say, I don't know what came over me. I wasn't myself. I knew it was wrong, but I couldn't stop. That is possession. Not by demons in the religious sense, but by the shadow. By the unconscious forces inside. You that are far more powerful than logic or willpower. The seductive prison. Let's be brutally honest. The most toxic relationships are often the hardest to leave. You might think that abuse, neglect, or cruelty would make it easier to walk away. But the opposite is true. Because abuse creates a cycle. A cycle of pain followed by relief. Of rejection followed by reconciliation. And your nervous system, your entire body, gets addicted to the roller coaster. This is why psychologists compare toxic love to drug addiction. The highs feel euphoric. The lows feel unbearable. And the very person who creates the pain is also the only person who can take it away. It's not just attraction anymore. It's bondage. And here's the paradox. The more destructive the relationship, the harder it is to break free. Because deep down, your unconscious believes, if I can survive this storm, if I can finally win their love, then I'll heal the wound once and for all. But storms don't heal you. They break you. The woman who became a siren. Let's tell a story. A man met a woman who was unlike anyone he had ever known. She was magnetic, intoxicating. Every time she looked at him, he felt alive. He described her as a drug I couldn't quit. But here was the reality. She was never consistent. One moment she gave him everything. Attention, affection, desire. The next moment she withdrew, vanished, left him in torment. He told his friends, I know she's dangerous for me. I know she'll destroy me. But I can't stop. What was happening? She had become the siren of his unconscious. She mirrored his anima, his inner feminine, and awakened all the unmet longings he had buried. But she also mirrored his wounds. By withdrawing, she triggered the abandonment he had felt since childhood. And every time he chased her, he was really chasing the mother who had never given him unconditional love. This is how desire becomes possession. The woman wasn't just a person anymore. She was a battlefield. She was the ghost of his trauma dressed in flesh. And he mistook that battlefield for love. The man who weaponized desire. But let's not pretend this only happens to men. There are women too who fall under possession. Drawn to men who are powerful, charming, dominant, but emotionally unavailable. And just as there are sirens, there are predators, men who instinctively learn to weaponize a woman's shadow against her. Consider this man. He knew that if he gave a woman intense attention at the beginning, seduced her with words, with energy, with presence, she would project onto him her animus, her unconscious masculine. He became her fantasy, her protector, her savior. But once she was hooked, once she was addicted, he withdrew. He grew cold, distant, dismissive. And instead of leaving, she chased him harder. She said, I don't know why I can't walk away. He hurts me, but I need him. What she didn't realize was that she wasn't chasing him. She was chasing her father's ghost, the first man who failed to give her love, the first heartbreak she never healed. He had weaponized her wound, not because he understood Jung, but because some people instinctively know the power of withholding. They know that by pulling away, they make the other person crave them more. And this is why Jung called projection dangerous. Because once someone embodies your unconscious, they don't just attract you, they own you. Obsession versus love. At this point, we have to pause and ask a critical question. How do you know if what you feel is love or possession? The answer is simpler than you think. Love feels expansive. Possession feels constricting. Love gives freedom. Possession creates addiction. Love grows in the light of truth. Possession thrives in secrecy, in fantasy, in projection. If your relationship makes you smaller, weaker, more afraid, it's not love. It's possession. But here's the catch. Possession feels like passion. It feels like destiny. It feels like the greatest love story of your life. And that's why it's so dangerous. Because your nervous system confuses chaos for chemistry. Peace feels boring. Stability feels foreign. So you keep choosing the storm. The addictive loop. This is the loop so many people live in. 1. Attraction. You meet someone who ignites you like fire. 2. Fusion. You fall into obsession, believing you've found the one. 3. Withdrawal. They pull away and you spiral into panic. 4. Chasing. You fight for their attention, believing that winning them back will heal you. 5. Relief. They return briefly and you feel alive again. 6. Repeat. This cycle is not romance. It's addiction. And like any addiction, it destroys. But unlike drugs or alcohol, this addiction hides under the language of love. You tell yourself, this is my soulmate. This is chemistry. This is fate. When in truth, it is your shadow. Replaying the same wound, demanding the same script. The voice of the shadow. Jung warned that the unconscious is always active. Even when you think you're choosing, your shadow is whispering. It whispers, choose the one who hurts you, because they remind you of home. Choose the one who withholds, because maybe this time, you'll finally win. Choose the one who makes you suffer, because suffering is familiar, and so you obey, not because you want to, but because you don't even realize. The voice is not yours. This is the true horror of possession. Not that you love the wrong person, but that you lose yourself in the process, breaking the spell. But here's the hope. Possession is not permanent. The spell can be broken, but only if you are willing to see the truth. The truth that attraction is not always love, that desire can be a trap, that the intensity you feel might not be chemistry. It might be trauma. And the moment you recognize this, the chains begin to loosen. The shadow loses its grip, because the unconscious only rules us when it's hidden. When it's brought into the light, it loses its power. Desire can liberate, but it can also enslave. The difference is awareness. By now, you see the trap. You understand how the unconscious projects, how attraction becomes possession. But what happens when this hidden force is no longer accidental? What happens when desire itself is weaponized? When love is not offered, but used as control? This is where attraction becomes not just projection, not just possession, but domination. Because here's the truth most people are too afraid to admit. Sexual energy is power. It can heal. It can unite, but it can also enslave. And in a world where shadows remain unexamined, power often comes not through love, but through control. The shadows hunger for power. Every human being carries wounds. Some wounds make us seek love. Others make us seek control. For the man who grew up powerless, ignored, unseen, seduction can become a way to prove dominance, to make another person chase, beg, obsess. It's not love he craves. It's proof that he matters. For the woman who never felt safe, who never received unconditional affection, desire can become a weapon. If she can make a man fall to his knees, if she can make him lose himself in her, she feels alive. She feels in control of the very force that once hurt her. And so, relationships become battlegrounds where wounds fight wounds, where one person seeks validation through being desired, while the other seeks salvation through being chosen. Neither sees the other. Both see only the mirror of their pain. The man who chased the illusion. There was a man who prided himself on being strong, successful, respected. But in the presence of one woman, he became powerless. She knew it. She could feel the way he lit up when she gave him a glance, and the way he broke when she withdrew. She learned quickly. She didn't need to dominate him with anger or control. All she had to do was reflect his anima, become the fantasy he carried inside. And he surrendered everything, time, money, loyalty, just for the hope of winning her affection. But here's the truth. She never gave it. She didn't need to. His projection kept him trapped. He wasn't chasing her. He was chasing himself. And she didn't love him. She loved the power. The woman who became the fantasy. On the other side, imagine a woman who keeps falling for men who are powerful, confident, but emotionally unavailable. At first, these men flood her with attention. They know exactly what to say to awaken her anima projection. They become her dream, her ideal, her rescuer. But once she is hooked, once she invests her heart, they withdraw. They stop calling. They keep her guessing. And she finds herself thinking, if I can just win him, then I'll be enough. But he has no interest in love. His interest is in power. The power of knowing that her emotions rise and fall with his every action. This is not romance. It's domination disguised as desire. The dance of predator and prey. Do you see the pattern? Attraction in its shadow form often becomes a dance of predator and prey. The predator is not necessarily evil. Often they are wounded too, but they've discovered, sometimes consciously, sometimes instinctively, that they can gain control through desire. They manipulate the projection. They become the mirror. The prey is not weak. They are not foolish. They are simply unconscious of their shadow. They don't realize that the person they're chasing is not real. It's a phantom of their own psyche. And so the dance continues. The more the predator withdraws, the more the prey chases. The more the prey chases, the more powerful the predator feels. Both are trapped, but in different ways. This is the battlefield of attraction. Obsession as currency. Why do some people weaponize desire? Why use love as control? Because obsession is one of the most powerful currencies on earth. When someone is obsessed with you, they will forgive betrayal. They will tolerate neglect. They will abandon logic, even abandon themselves. That level of control is intoxicating. And if you've ever felt powerless in life, that control can feel like survival. A woman who never felt safe may unconsciously learn that if men obsess over her, she cannot be abandoned. A man who never felt respected may learn that if women crave him, he cannot be invisible. It's not evil. It's adaptation, but it leaves destruction in its path. The theater of shadows. At this point, it's important to recognize, when attraction is weaponized, the relationship is no longer between two real people. It becomes theater. The man is not loving the woman. He is loving his anima, projected onto her. The woman is not loving the man. She is loving her animus, projected onto him. And both are not relating to reality, but to ghosts. The result? Intimacy becomes performance. Seduction becomes strategy. Connection becomes war. And in this war, there are no winners. Only wounds repeating themselves under a new disguise. Signs you are in a battle, not a bond. So how do you know if your attraction has turned into war? Look for these signs. 1. You feel more anxious than safe. Instead of peace, the relationship fuels panic, jealousy, insecurity. 2. Power feels uneven. One person chases while the other withdraws. One begs while the other withholds. 3. Seduction replaces intimacy. There is passion, but no depth. Desire, but no vulnerability. 4. The bond feels addictive. You can't walk away, even when you know it's destroying you. 5. Love feels like a performance. You are acting out roles, rescuer, victim, seducer, conqueror, rather than meeting as whole selves. If these signs are familiar, you're not in love. You're in a battle of shadows. The cost of weaponized attraction. What's the cost of living this way? It's more than heartbreak. It's the erosion of the self. Because when you're trapped in this war, you are not living your life. You are living your wound. You spend your energy chasing ghosts, proving worth, fighting battles that were never yours to fight. And in the process, you miss real love. You miss the chance to meet someone as they are, without projection, without performance, without war. The way out. So how do you escape this battlefield? You stop playing the game. You stop chasing obsession and start seeking wholeness. This doesn't mean rejecting desire. It means seeing desire for what it is. Asking yourself, am I drawn to this person because they are healthy for me, or because they trigger my shadow? Am I choosing them, or is my wound choosing for me? Because once you see the war for what it is, you no longer need to fight it. You can step off the battlefield. You can choose peace over chaos. Desire is power, but only if you own it. If you remain unconscious, that power is stolen, used against you, manipulated, weaponized. We've seen the dark side of desire, projection, possession, addiction, domination. We've walked through the battlefield of shadows. And perhaps you recognize yourself in these stories. Perhaps you've loved someone who felt like destiny, only to realize they were a mirror of your wound. But Jung never intended for us to remain prisoners of the unconscious. His life's work was not to terrify us with the shadow, but to teach us how to integrate it, how to become whole. Because until you make the unconscious conscious, attraction will always enslave you. But the moment you face your shadow, love can transform. Not the fantasy love. Not the obsessive, addictive, dominating kind, but something deeper. Something real. The courage to look within. The first step is the hardest. Admitting that what you called love was often shadow at work. This requires ruthless honesty. Ask yourself, why am I drawn to the people I am drawn to? Do they nurture my growth or do they repeat my pain? Am I in love with them or with the version of myself I project onto them? It's not easy to face this, because it means admitting that much of your romantic history wasn't guided by destiny, but by wounds, that you weren't cursed with bad luck, you were repeating old scripts. But honesty is liberation. When you name the shadow, it loses its grip. Integration of the anima animus. Jung spoke of the anima, the inner feminine in men, and the animus, the inner masculine in women. When these figures remain unconscious, we project them onto lovers. We chase women who embody our anima, or men who embody our animus. But when we integrate them, when we make peace with the feminine or masculine, within, we no longer need to project. The man who integrates his anima doesn't fall helplessly for every woman who mirrors his longing. He recognizes, this desire is not about her, it's about me. He learns to connect to his own inner world, his creativity, his sensitivity, his soul. The woman who integrates her animus no longer craves men who withhold. She recognizes, this drive, this power, this strength I seek, it lives inside me too. And she no longer tolerates being diminished just to feel protected. This is individuation, reclaiming the parts of yourself you once chased in others. The end of addiction. Once integration begins, something strange happens. The chaos stops feeling attractive. The storm that once thrilled you now exhausts you. The roller coaster that once felt like passion now feels like pain. And peace, real peace, no longer feels boring. It feels like home. This is how you know you are healing. Because your nervous system is no longer addicted to the familiar pattern of trauma. It has learned a new rhythm, a new song. What conscious love feels like. So what does conscious love look like? It's nothing like the movies. It's quieter, simpler, but infinitely deeper. Freedom, you don't feel chained. You feel chosen. Safety, you don't live in panic. You feel grounded, steady. Clarity, you don't chase illusions. You see the other person as they are, without projection. Growth, you don't shrink in their presence. You expand. Wholeness, you don't need them to complete you. You meet them as equals, already whole. This doesn't mean there's no passion, no spark. It means the passion is not born of wounds. It's born of truth. The mirror becomes clear. When you stop projecting, relationships change. Your partner is no longer the battlefield where your shadow plays out. They are no longer the ghost of your parents, or the mirror of your wounds. They are themselves, imperfect, real, human. And for the first time, you can love them not for how they make you feel, not for the fantasies they embody, but for who they truly are. This is why Jung said that the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. In unconscious love, the reaction destroys. In conscious love, the reaction transforms. Facing the shadow together. There is one more step. Conscious love is not just about facing your own shadow. It's about holding space for your partner's shadow too. Because no one is fully healed. No one is fully integrated. We are all works in progress. The difference is this. In unconscious relationships, the shadow controls in secret. In conscious relationships, the shadow is spoken aloud. It's acknowledged, worked through, integrated together. Instead of weaponizing wounds, you share them. Instead of projecting pain, you reveal it. And instead of reenacting trauma, you help each other heal. The path forward. Let's be clear, this path is not easy. It requires self-awareness to notice when attraction is shadow-driven. Courage to walk away from relationships that enslave you, even when they feel intoxicating. Patience to sit with loneliness rather than filling it with chaos. Discipline to do the inner work of integration. rather than searching for someone else to carry your shadow. But the reward is immense. Because when you stop being ruled by unconscious desire, you gain something far greater, freedom. And from that freedom, you can finally choose, not out of fear, not out of addiction, but out of truth. The alchemy of love. Attraction is not evil. Desire is not wrong. These forces are part of life itself. But when they are unconscious, they enslave. When they are conscious, they transform. This is the alchemy of love, turning shadow into light, projection into presence, addiction into freedom. And Jung's greatest insight was this: love is not about finding your other half. It's about becoming whole within yourself. So that when you meet another, you don't chain them with your wounds. You meet them soul to soul. That is conscious love. The final word. So let's end where we began. Attraction is not always love. Sometimes it is projection. Sometimes it is possession. Sometimes it is war. But it can also be the doorway to wholeness, if you are willing to face the shadow it reveals. Because every lover who hurt you, every obsession that consumed you, every toxic bond that enslaved you, they were not curses. They were mirrors. They showed you the parts of yourself you had not yet faced. And if you dare to face them, if you dare to integrate them, then love no longer has to be a battlefield. It can be a sanctuary. Not the storm, not the addiction, not the domination, but the meeting of two souls, awake, aware, and free. That is the revolution Jung offered, and that is the love worth waiting for. Patience, to sit with loneliness rather than filling it with chaos. Discipline, to do the inner work of integration, rather than searching for someone else to carry your shadow. But the reward is immense. Because when you stop being ruled by unconscious desire, you gain something far greater, freedom. And from that freedom, you can finally choose, not out of fear, not out of addiction, but out of truth. The alchemy of love. Attraction is not evil. Desire is not wrong. These forces are part of life itself. But when they are unconscious, they enslave. When they are conscious, they transform. This is the alchemy of love, turning shadow into light, projection into presence, addiction into freedom. And Jung's greatest insight was this: love is not about finding your other half. It's about becoming whole within yourself. So that when you meet another, you don't chain them with your wounds. You meet them soul to soul. That is conscious love. The final word. So let's end where we began. Attraction is not always love. Sometimes it is projection. Sometimes it is possession. Sometimes it is war. But it can also be the doorway to wholeness, if you are willing to face the shadow it reveals. Because every lover who hurt you, every obsession that consumed you, every toxic bond that enslaved you, they were not curses. They were mirrors. They showed you the parts of yourself you had not yet faced. And if you dare to face them, if you dare to integrate them, then love no longer has to be a battlefield. It can be a sanctuary. Not the storm, not the addiction, not the domination, but the meeting of two souls, awake, aware, and free. That is the revolution Jung offered, and that is the love worth waiting for. Patience, to sit with loneliness rather than filling it with chaos. Discipline, to do the inner work of integration, rather than searching for someone else to carry your shadow. But the reward is immense. Because when you stop being ruled by unconscious desire, you gain something far greater, freedom. And from that freedom, you can finally choose, not out of fear, not out of addiction, but out of truth. The alchemy of love. Attraction is not evil. Desire is not wrong. These forces are part of life itself. But when they are unconscious, they enslave. When they are conscious, they transform. This is the alchemy of love, turning shadow into light, projection into presence, addiction into freedom. And Jung's greatest insight was this: love is not about finding your other half. It's about becoming whole within yourself. So that when you meet another, you don't chain them with your wounds. You meet them soul to soul. That is conscious love. The final word. So let's end where we began. Attraction is not always love. Sometimes it is projection. Sometimes it is possession. Sometimes it is war. But it can also be the doorway to wholeness, if you are willing to face the shadow it reveals. Because every lover who hurt you, every obsession that consumed you, every toxic bond that enslaved you, they were not curses. They were mirrors. They showed you the parts of yourself you had not yet faced. And if you dare to face them, if you dare to integrate them, then love no longer has to be a battlefield. It can be a sanctuary. Not the storm, not the addiction, not the domination, but the meeting of two souls, awake, aware, and free. That is the revolution Jung offered, and that is the love worth waiting for. If this spoke to you, don't stop here. Every day, I share new insights on love, shadow, and the unconscious forces shaping our relationships. Not surface-level tips, not cliches, but the raw psychological truth most people are too afraid to say out loud. Subscribe now, and let's keep walking this path together. From projection to power, from shadow to soul, from chaos to conscious love. Because the work of wholeness doesn't happen alone.